John, Happy New Year, my friend. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much. Happy New Year, Jason. I feel like I may have sympathetically lost my voice watching you screaming at the police last night. So if I have no voice, it's from watching you screaming.
Well, I appreciate
loss of vocal cords watching you hollering. It was amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate the sympathy. It's a strange thing because, I don't ever go out planning to yell at the cops or whatever. And I always get a very bad feeling after an outing like that because it's just so much negative energy. And, look, we want the police to be here to preserve order and keep a civilized society. But I've had so many personal interactions with the NYPD that have been just absolutely beyond disappointing. It just causes me to wonder, what do we need them for if they're not actually going to do what they're expected to do?
Well, and they've been put in such a tough position by de Blasio and by their leadership. And I think that was what you were seeing. And it may be tough to get it in the moment, but I think what you captured was a hell of a lot of shame. And it didn't hit me until afterwards, until after watching, because I didn't watch it live. I was like on a delay. I think I watched it right after you finished streaming it. And so afterwards, I realized, I think there's a lot of shame here, because I think they realized that you were right. And that's why they kept turning their back on you, because you made your whole point in one question. And there was nothing that they could say that was intelligent. And there was one sergeant that said he was with his family and he put his mask on and
right.
he had the gold badge and everything, a tall guy. And he said, yeah, we do take the oath. Mm-hmm. He was the only guy. He was the only guy that admitted it. But yeah, these guys are thugs. And the truth is, so here's the thing. They're using the sanitation department as if there's there's going to be some sort of terrorist attack with tanks. Are they worried that tanks are going to attack Times Square? If I didn't see your footage, I would never believe this. And I don't think CNN reported this, and I don't think MSNBC showed this. And the net of this, Jason, is you've been living in New York City for a long time. And you've, right? You're
30 years consecutively. I was born in New York City. I've grown up in New York City since I was born.
All right. And you had a company on 8th Avenue, 520 8th Avenue, right? So I saw you walk by. 505. Yep. Okay. So all right. But you showed everybody the building and you were right near Penn Station walking up 8th Avenue. And so it's your city to the extent that you've been paying taxes in this city, right? The other folks who were visiting, and I was amazed at how many people were visiting from Mexico, but I was amazed at how many people were visiting, period. I was shocked. People actually came to New York. They must not have watched any of your videos.
No.
Right. What was their expectation? And then to see this, the net of this is the decisions that are being made are baseless. In other words, locking down a city using barricades. First of all, do you remember what happened with the barricades in Las Vegas when tragedy struck?
Probably kept people from escaping quickly.
Yeah. So, and you look at the barricade deployment and you ask yourself, was there any rhyme or reason given to this? Did they ask themselves, in the event of an emergency, what's the ramifications of these barricades? Right? So now what if a bomb had gone off somewhere nearby, like what happened in Nashville just a couple days ago?
Right.
We had a Nashville thing, right? Mm-hmm. So if something similar had happened with all these barricades up and all the scaffolding and the garbage trucks everywhere, that would not have been good. And you got to ask yourself, who's the genius behind this master plan to do this? And like you said, you've got a whole bunch of people now packed on the side streets. How is this different from just let everybody into Times Square and your density is going to go down?
Right.
I mean, you brought that point up in the middle of your broadcast. So I think it was a very important broadcast. I think for the people who haven't seen what you did, it's important to watch it. It's important to see, again, the cops are being, some of them are just abusive. Like, I love the guy who's like 6'8".
Right.
Like, you big shot. It was
Yeah,
hysterical.
with his body armor, his sap gloves, his guns, twice my weight, twice my height, and all his friends around, I'm sure he could beat the crap out of me.
And the point is, you paid for all this. You paid for all of it. And you paid a fair chunk of it. You've done
Over
all
the
right,
years.
right? I mean, you're a middle-class guy. You've paid a lot of taxes over the years. And so the net of this is your stuff. And they're telling you can't use it, which if there was some scientific reason that was documented, that would be fine. But like you said, because of COVID is not really a rational reason. Like, so you can go eat and dine in those little street huts that you were walking by, right? You were showing us all these cockamamie street huts made out of wood and plastic. And that's okay. Inside the restaurant's not. So the restaurants are infected, but the street dining, that's okay.
Yeah.
It's this type of decision making that the public is starting to say, well, wait a second, is there any rhyme or reason to this? Do you guys have any idea what you're doing? And when you look at the death count in New York and you realize that Cuomo has more people dead than countries that have populations of 200 million. What that means is he shouldn't be doing anything other than listening. And the people that he should be listening to, he hasn't called. And that's the problem. And that's where we get into negligent. And that's where it's worse. It's negligent manslaughter. So, and what we're going to talk about tonight, after we get into this whole thing about sex and all that, and does sex matter, we're going to talk a little bit more about negligent manslaughter in 2021 and what's the game plan for this year. Because the net of it is, we can't keep talking about it. Larry Klayman has said the same thing. It's time. It's enough. They've crossed the line. And there are those of us who just can't put up with it. And so I'm not advocating violence in any way. I'm advocating the law. And thank God the forefathers put these little tiny pieces in there that are going to allow us to do this peacefully and legally. Right? So over the course of the last week or two, we didn't do a show Christmas Day.
Hope you had a Merry Christmas.
Oh, it was freaking awesome. What are you kidding? So I did nothing. So if you go to the channel on Christmas Eve, I published an assessment of your interview with
Dersh.
Mr. Dersh.
Oh, it was great.
Right.
I tweeted it at Dersh. Thank you for that. For people who haven't seen this, you definitely want to make your way over to the John E. Hoover YouTube channel and check out this really thoughtful and excellent informative response video that John created. He had even stronger arguments to counter what Dersh was saying. Harvard Yard, I like that.
Well, it's easy to do it in retrospect, right? So I can go back and rewind and play the clip and hit stop, right? And what you see is the way he manipulates words, the way he tries to manipulate a conversation, and the way he tries to bully it with this pseudo-intellectualism, right? And the problem is his pseudo-intellectualism doesn't hold a candle to my spreadsheets. Okay? And so he can pomp all he wants, Mr. Harvard Yard. I got the spreadsheets. And the spreadsheets are the facts. The spreadsheets matter. And so this is why I'm angry. So I'm angry, like you were angry last night, like you were yelling at the cops. I'm angry. And to tell you the truth, I'm angry at all of us. I feel like we've all failed. And what do I mean by we all failed? Very few people seem to know what's going on.
Yeah.
Now, more and more people are starting to realize it on Twitter. You're starting to see more people on Twitter like Congressman Biggs. What's his name? Andy Biggs? I forget his name. There's a Congressman Biggs who's asking about the flu on Twitter. There's other people asking about the flu. And this week, if you go to my deck, I think what we saw was Zero Hedge is starting to ask about the flu. Right. So now the notion that I put forward, I guess it was back in September, that influenza has been eradicated from Earth. That was the Nobel Prize winning paper.
They're saying it seriously now. I've seen serious news outlets saying, oh, social distancing and wearing a mask has eradicated the flu. I was like, what?
Yes, that's why I'm going to win the prize, is because of this nonsense. It's like, this is the lemming effect, right? This is the Mandela effect, right? This isn't real. I'm putting it forward, drawing everybody out. Yeah. Wearing masks is curing H1N1. Oh, yeah? Then why didn't we do that 10 years ago? Geniuses.
Right.
Okay. Again, this is why I'm going to answer the does sex matter in a second, but it's important that we establish this is the first day of the new year in New York, right? Where I am, it's already February 7th. But I'm
the jet lag, man.
Exactly. All right, let's go to the next slide.
Well, before we do, John, I want to remind everybody that in just about 15 minutes, we're going to be starting our sponsor exclusive, and that's going to be available to people who are sponsors on subscribestar.com/IamJohnCullen, patreon.com/IamJohnCullen, and Subscribestar and Patreon for Crowdsource the Truth. It's super important that people sponsor the show. We've made it really super economical. Now, John, I don't know if I told you this, but I've been working with Subscribestar to create a program that will allow people to get annual subscriptions on Subscribestar. I think it's still in beta, but they've just activated the next phase of it that allows me to enable the annual subscription. So when people buy an annual subscription, and it's only available on Subscribestar for Crowdsource the Truth right now. I'm going to try to get you and all the other co-hosts in on this as soon as possible. But soon people will be able to buy annual subscriptions on Subscribestar. You can get them now on Patreon. And it's a great way for people to go in depth on all this information. And just real quick to respond to something you said earlier, it wasn't my intention to deliberately, just shame the cops. I didn't go out there to bust somebody's balls. I actually... I hope.
I'm not suggesting that you did.
No, I know.
I
just want people.
I sensed it in them.
And I want to address that because it's a good point. What I actually had in my head when I went up there was I said, you know what? I'm just going to be real nice and reasonable and find a cop and say, look, I'm by myself. I'm press. I'm not going to bother anybody. I had a mask with me if they wanted me to wear that, and just let me in. And when they wouldn't, I asked them the serious question of, did you take an oath to the Constitution? Because if you're ignoring it over something like this, what happens when the mayor tells you, go bust down the door to Goodman's apartment and inject him with the Dershfax? What happens when they say, you know what, these guys are getting too uppity over here, shoot Goodman and kill him? Where do they draw the line? And for every single one of those cops that I spoke to last night, and any member of the NYPD or any police force that sees that video in the future, I want them to think about that question and think about which side of this are they on. Because forever I've heard that, the FBI and the NYPD is mostly honest, good, line level people. I'm sorry. I reject that notion, because if it were true, the limited number of problematic individuals that are there, even if they were the leadership, would be forced out by the overwhelming majority of honest individuals. So the evidence that I see indicates that these are corrupt, broken organizations that are not doing what we need, and that's very disconcerting to me.
And the root cause, when it's not addressed, spreads. So to your point, when you don't address the bad apples in the bunch, it ruins the bunch.
Right.
That's the whole idea. So if you don't get rid of the abusive, and this is a video I did a while back, where we were looking at the fact that is it racism or is it just abusive policing? And regardless of race, would it matter if you're Asian? They're just doing it to anybody. We saw them doing it to old men, throwing old men on the ground. So something needs to get fixed, and it doesn't appear that de Blasio is the guy who's going to fix it. That's for sure, not in New York.
We forgot to address Grandma Fauci.
Well, again, the question is, does sex matter? And boy, oh boy, I'm almost I'm wary of using the term sex because I'm going to get labeled
gender. Yeah,
I think I'm called gender gray, and we'll get to what does gray gendered or gender gray mean in a minute. I'll explain that. But we've only got a couple more minutes before we've got to go to our thing. So let's jump into the material. Let me show everybody kind of where we're headed with this because it's pretty interesting. Before we let's go to the next slide. All right, so before we go into the sex and does the sex matter, what is the biggest story of 2021? It's right in front of you. That's the story. This is the biggest story of 2021. Every single congressman and senator is going to say China lied, China virus, China lied. Hold China accountable. There's no one dead in China outside of Wuhan. This is the biggest story of 2021, is that there's less than 10 people dead in Shanghai today. That's the biggest story of the year. It's not the China virus. Drop it. And anybody want to debate me? I'll come to Congress and I'll take off the hat and I'll take off the glasses.
Nice.
There aren't 10 people dead in Shanghai. Go to the next slide. You want to know the second biggest story of 2021? There aren't 10 people dead in Beijing. Period.
That's crazy.
I just won the frickin' Pulitzer Prize on the first day of the year. How do you like that? Done.
Yeah.
Done. Tucker, Hannity, Anderson Cooper, you guys can't read a frickin' map? You suck. But guess what? It gets worse. I'm angry because this map is from Michael Bloomberg. Okay? Is Michael Bloomberg not able to read his own map? Does Michael Bloomberg not know that there's less than 1,000 people dead in Korea? How many times has Bill Gates appeared on television over the course of the last 9 or 10 months? Does Bill Gates not know that there's less than 10 people in Shanghai? Does Bill Gates not know that there's less than 10 people dead in Taiwan? Is it negligent manslaughter, Bill, to sit there and just smile smugly as everybody dies in New York? Is that negligent manslaughter, Bill? I'm going to let the jury decide. But in 2021, I'm going to issue a warrant for the arrest of Bill Gates and Michael Bloomberg. Citizen's arrest. I'm issuing a warrant. Negligent manslaughter. And we have the evidence. And you're looking at it. Michael Bloomberg published it. And I'm pissed. Because Michael Bloomberg and Bill Gates know exactly what's right in front of you. They didn't say a thing.
35 dead in Vietnam. 35.
100 million people.
100 million and 35 dead. So, I mean, isn't Vietnam still kind of infrastructure stressed from being totally destroyed in the 70s and maybe not the most medically sophisticated, infrastructure sophisticated country, but they only have 35 dead?
And Bill Gates doesn't know this. Bill Gates keeps it a secret. He doesn't know that there's less than 10 people dead in Shanghai. He doesn't know that there's less than 50 dead in Vietnam with 100 million people. He doesn't know that there's less than 10 dead in Beijing. He doesn't know that. Michael Bloomberg doesn't know it. It's his map. It's the Michael Bloomberg School of Public Health at Johns Hopkins University. He paid for this. And no one knows how to read a map. I'm the only guy in America that can read a map.
It's crazy.
So yeah, I'm pissed. I'm pissed. How many people are dead in the USA? Oh, none in Laos, none in Cambodia, 35 in Vietnam, less than 10 in Shanghai, less than 10 in Beijing, and how many in New York? More than Nigeria. Uh-huh. You go into prison, Cuomo, Fauci, Gates, Bloomberg. And then Tedros, you're going to The Hague. Tedros, you know this. You know there's not 10 people dead in Shanghai.
It's staggering, John. I mean, we've been talking about this for months.
No, Jason, I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
Well, it's their information, though. It's their information that they've put out that they're not even looking at. The only way you're wrong is if they're wrong, because you're just pointing out what's on their own map.
Right. And then we got the CIA and Project Mockingbird.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, right. So this is the article to combat the show that we did with Dr. Judy Mikovits.
Oh, wow.
And this was on CBS Market Watch.
Huh.
Less than 72 hours after the show we did with Dr. Judy. This is scientists pour cold water on intriguing and potentially fatal similarity between COVID-19 and 1918 flu, published November 15th by CBS Market Watch.
Why does it say deleted?
Interesting. The only people that discuss this, the only people that discussed this was us with Dr. Judy. And then this shows up hours later.
Yeah, but the story has been deleted by the news provider, according to Fidelity. What's that about?
That'll be next week's show. I had no idea. Bookmark that, and we'll be back. So we've got to go to our patron only thing. But let's go to Sex Matter real quick. Do we have 2 minutes?
We do have 2 minutes, but here, it's on Market Watch right there. I'm going to have to check that out. That's astounding. Yeah. But yes, back to the deck.
This is the Mockingbird response to the show we did with Dr. Judy.
They're watching, John.
Of course they are. Nobody wants you to see this, and it's right in front of you. Go to Drudge Report. Go to World Death Map on Drudge Report. Right in the middle column, at the bottom of the middle column in Drudge, it says World Death Map. Click on that. Yahtzee. Go to Shanghai, go to Beijing. You don't need a degree. You don't need to be a cartographer to click on Beijing. Go to the middle column, scroll down to the bottom. That's you last night. That's last year. Before you get to all the press listings, like the last story will be World Death Map. It's at World Sick Map.
Oh, it's just the Johns Hopkins one.
Yeah. Right. I'm just telling everybody how to find it. You go to Drudge Report, you go to the middle column, you go to the last thing, it says World Sick Map. You click on that, go to Beijing, go to Shanghai. There's not 10 people dead. There's no one dead in Cambodia. There's no one dead in Laos. Mongolia shares a massive border with China. No one's dead. All right. But sex, does sex matter? What if I told you 90% of the people who have died with coronavirus were women? Would that matter?
Would be shocking. Yeah.
So let's go to the next slide. Let's hurry. All right. Thank you for the lack of acknowledgement that the guys at Zero Hedge, but at least they are talking about influenza. So for those of you who go to Zero Hedge, make some comments that, yeah, John Cullen broke this on Crowdsource the Truth with Jason Goodman back in March and April of last year. Great that you guys are reporting on it 10 months later without any acknowledgement using them. These are the maps we showed, right? This is exactly what we showed 10 months ago. All right, go to the next slide real quick. We got like 3 seconds before we got to go patron only. I want people to see the sex stuff because the sex stuff is fascinating. You guys have to see this.
Is this the next slide you want or the next one?
No, next. That's not sex. Those are maps.
Ah.
Okay. Does sex matter? Bing, boom, boom. Next slide. Who's Nellie Stevens? Nettie Stevens. I'll show you that later. All right, so all these terms with gender identity, next slide. I'm talking about X chromosomes and Y chromosomes. Next slide. Just keep bang, down, slide. We only have like 1 minute. There's all these terms. I'm talking about chromosome stuff. So I'm talking about when you're born, you either have XX or XY. I'm talking about that.
Unless there's a
not
genetic anomaly.
Right. I'm not right. So I'm not talking about how you identify. I'm talking about when you're born, you either have XX or XY. So that's what I'm talking about, not how you identify. So let's go to the next page in my deck. X, Y, we don't have time for it. Keep going till you get to the next chart. Pie chart. That's Nettie. She's the one who discovered the XY chromosome. Okay.
Really?
Yeah. So this is the breakdown. I'm not going to tell you which is male and which is female. Does that matter? Go to the next slide. Would it matter if that was the number? At what point would you want to know, holy mackerel, are you telling me there's 263,000 women that died and only 30? No. I'm asking you, where's your dividing point? Go back up a slide. Go back up.
Yeah.
Split. Now go down 1, 2 slides. 1, 2. Okay, those are the real numbers, and you don't know the sex. 138,000, 163,000. Do you care?
Men dying more.
Go to the next slide.
What
So
is that?
54 to 46. 54 to 46%. I don't want to use the terms male and female. I'll be labeled a gray gender, a gender gray or whatever, using the old.
Well, we do have to transition over to the sponsor exclusive segment, John. We're just about out of time here. So I hope that people will join us.
One more slide as we go. Show them one last slide. One peek. That's it. Those are the numbers. Yeah, let's see. But we got to go.
What is it showing us? All deaths.
How many? And then the next one, we'll break it down by the age. And we're going to get into by age, male and female. Is there a difference? And the answer is yes. The difference is significant. And nobody wants to talk about that. So we're going to get into that. We're going to get into further breaking down the data in ways nobody's done and that you guys haven't seen before. So you're going to see all new charts when we get to our subscriber thing. And again, it's time to hold these guys accountable. I'm going to issue a warrant for their arrest, for a citizen's arrest. We have the evidence. It's right in front of us. Bill Gates doesn't know this. Bill Gates doesn't
John,
know
we
this.
got to make the transition here. So let me just interrupt. People who've been watching Crowdsource the Truth for the past 4 years, they see what's going on. They know that social engineers can manipulate Twitter. They can manipulate YouTube. This has been more difficult for them to do by broadcasting on subscribestar.com/IamJohnCullen and patreon.com/IamJohnCullen and Subscribestar and Patreon/crowdsourcethetruth. We've been able to protect our ability to keep bringing people this information. And I want to thank all the generous sponsors, people who want to join us. Now's the time. Get on there, and we will see everybody